Blood never completely washes out of marble. No matter how many times you scrub, no matter what chemicals you use, there's always a shadow, a memory left in the stone. Carmen Santos knew this better than anyone. She had been cleaning the Imperatriz Casino for 10 years, and in all those years, she had learned 3 rules for survival. See everything, hear everything, say nothing. But on the night Don Vittorio Marchetti was about to lose $20 million to the Colombian cartel, Carmen broke the 3rd rule. And when a cleaning lady, who spends 10 years invisible, finally opens her mouth, the entire underworld trembles. The city of Santos, on the coast of São Paulo state, had 2 faces. By day, tourists crowded the beaches where children built sandcastles and street vendors offered popsicles and cheap hats. Families strolled through the aquarium, pointing at sharks and rays, while guides recited memorized tales. Life unfolded with that sunny normalcy that made everything seem innocent, predictable, safe. But at night, when the mist rose from the sea like ghostly fingers and swallowed the lights of the shoreline, another world emerged from the shadows. A world where deals were sealed with handshakes that were worth more than contracts signed by expensive lawyers, where betrayal was punished with bullets and not with lawsuits that dragged on for years, and where the name Marchetti was whispered with the kind of respect born from the ancestral fear of predators that hunt in the darkness. The Imperatriz Casino stood on Ponta de Praia like a resurrected Art Deco palace from the 1940s, when Santos was still experiencing the peak of the coffee boom and fortune flowed through the port like a golden river. The architecture was deliberately nostalgic. A white facade with jade green details, arched windows with stained glass imported from France, a grand entrance with carved mahogany doors weighing 200 kilos each. Officially, the place was registered as a private social club operating in a grey area of Brazilian law. Members paid exorbitant monthly fees starting at 10,000 reais, and what happened at the poker, roulette and blackjack tables was classified as entertainment among friends, protected by private association. Unofficially, it was the headquarters of Vittorio Marchetti, the man who controlled 60% of the operations of the port of Santos, laundered 300 million reais annually through shell companies spread across 3 continents, and kept judges, politicians and police chiefs on his payroll with the administrative efficiency of a meticulous accountant who never left auditable traces. Vittorio was 58 years old, his body once muscular, but beginning to succumb to gravity and decades of 25-year-old Scotch whiskey. His grey hair was slicked back with old-fashioned brilliantine, gleaming under the casino lights like polished silver. He wore Italian suits tailored by a Milanese tailor who served only 3 clients in Brazil, silk ties that cost more than a teacher's monthly salary, and leather shoes so soft they made no sound as he walked through the marble corridors, a silent ghost that appeared when least expected. His eyes were as dark as oil wells and seemed to calculate the value of your soul, your weaknesses, your fears, even before shaking your hand with that firm grip that made it clear who held power in that room. His father, Giuseppe Marchetti, had arrived from Sicily in the 1950s with nothing but a feared surname and connections to families that made emperors tremble and politicians hide. Post-war Italy was in chaos, and men like Giuseppe didn't wait for reconstruction. They emigrated, taking with them the Cosa Nostra Code and adapting it to the tropical chaos of Brazil, where laws were suggestions and bribery was more efficient than bureaucracy. Giuseppe built an empire in Brazil over 3 decades of meticulous work, legally importing olive oil, wine and marble as a respectable front, while the real foundation was arms trafficking for South American dictatorships and money laundering for cartels that needed to turn cocaine into real estate. When Giuseppe died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 73 during a dinner where he was discussing territorial merger with Brazilians from Rio, Vittorio inherited not only multi-million-dollar businesses, but a brutal code of honor etched in blood and tradition. Never betray the family, never show weakness that enemies can exploit, and never, ever trust someone who hasn't bled alongside you in battles that tested loyalty to the very brink of death. The casino was decorated with an anachronistic luxury that made visitors feel like they had traveled back in time. Czech crystal chandeliers, each weighing 300 kilos and worth more than entire apartments, hung from the ceiling at precise intervals. Tables made of mahogany, imported from Indonesia, varnished until they shone like dark mirrors, were always ready for games that began at 10 p.m. and ended when the sun rose. Authentic Persian carpets, some 200 years old, acquired at secret auctions of confiscated assets, covered the floors, cushioning footsteps and creating that stuffy atmosphere of places where secrets are more valuable than gold. The walls were covered in honey-colored travertine marble, imported from the same Roman quarries that supplied material for the Colosseum, and it was precisely there, near the curved staircase leading to the private offices on the second floor, that Carmen spent 15 minutes every night scrubbing a stain that only she seemed to see. A stain from 3 years ago, when a traitor named Eduardo Fonseca had been summarily executed for violating the sacred code. He had sold information about an arms shipment to the federal police, almost causing an operation that would have dismantled half of Vittorio's structure. Marco Scar had brought him to the casino after closing time, forced him to kneel at that exact spot on the marble, and placed a bullet at the base of his skull. Carmen had cleaned the blood that night, working from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. with industrial chemicals and 3 buckets of bleach. But the shadow remained, invisible to others, but glaring to her, a ghostly reminder that violence had a memory, and that in that world, mistakes were not forgiven, only eliminated. Carmen Santos was 46 years old, with a small, compact body of 1.58 meters, sculpted by decades of physical work that had developed muscles in places gyms couldn't reach. Her black hair was beginning to turn grey at the temples in silvery strands that she didn't bother to dye. Vanity was a luxury she couldn't afford, and invisibility was a benefit that grey hair guaranteed. Her face was ordinary, the kind you see on the street and forget 5 minutes later, regular features, without striking beauty or memorable ugliness, tanned skin from someone who had spent a lifetime in the sun, but didn't have time for treatments, brown eyes that always seemed slightly downcast, avoiding direct eye contact, a blessing in the world she worked in, where being noticed meant danger. She arrived punctually at 11 p.m., even when the players were still immersed at the green tables, but the administrative offices were beginning to empty. Her uniform was always the same: faded navy blue trousers from so much washing, a short-sleeved white shirt with the casino's discreet logo embroidered on the pocket, and black rubber-soled shoes that made no noise. A cleaning cart accompanied her, buckets, cloths and chemicals organized with obsessive precision that revealed a methodical personality. She cleaned until 6 a.m., and invisible as a ghost haunting forgotten corridors, moving through the opulent spaces with the silent grace of someone who had learned, through a decade of survival, not to be noticed, not to be remembered, not to exist beyond a useful function. No one there knew that Carmen had been a court interpreter for 12 years before her husband, Daniel Santos, testified about a brutal murder linked to the rival mafia of the Azevedo brothers. It was 2012, and Daniel was returning from his job as a mechanic when he saw 3 men execute an informant in an underground parking lot. He testified, naively believing in justice and police protection. He entered the Federal Witness Protection Program, which was so incompetent and underfunded that critical information leaked within 6 months. False address, new job, everything reached the Azevedos like a wrapped gift. Daniel died in an ambush that had been staged to look like a casual robbery. 3 shots, wallet taken, cell phone stolen. The police filed it as robbery-homicide and never investigated thoroughly. Carmen lost everything during that nightmarish period. Her job as an interpreter, no one hires professionals associated with criminal scandals, even as victims. The house she had spent 15 years paying for, sold hastily for half its value to pay off debts Daniel had left behind and to finance her escape to another city. Her very identity. She legally changed her name from Silva to Santos, cut off contact with friends she had known for decades, abandoned her social media profiles, and became a deliberate ghost. She started over as a cleaner because it was a job that didn't require complex references or in-depth background checks, and ended up at Imperatrice because the universe has a cruel sense of irony. The widow of a mafia victim working at the headquarters of another boss, cleaning the same marble floors stained with the blood of other betrayals. But Carmen possessed a dangerous superpower no one suspected. She understood 6 languages fluently: native Portuguese, Spanish learned from her Argentinian grandmother, Italian studied in college and perfected interpreting immigrants, C2-level certified English, French from an intensive course before marriage, and even basic Mandarin acquired in a 3-year relationship with a Chinese professor in her youth. When powerful men negotiated in languages they presumed to be safe, assuming the cleaning lady scrubbing the floor nearby understood nothing beyond broken Portuguese, she absorbed every word with the precision of a digital recorder. Every veiled threat in Sicilian Italian, every planned betrayal in Colombian Spanish, every sealed agreement in English with a Russian accent. And she stored it all in a photographic memory honed over years, interpreting complex legal testimonies where one wrong word could mean the difference between innocence and life imprisonment. She didn't do it out of morbid curiosity or ambition. She did it out of pure survival instinct. Information was the most valuable currency in the underworld, and knowing when to lower your head, when to disappear, when to feign deafness could mean the difference between staying alive and disappearing in a container at the port. The storm that would change everything began on a grey Tuesday in November, when the ocean was churned by a cold front coming from Argentina, and the smell of salt mixed with the impending storm wafted through the casino windows that Vittorio always kept slightly open. He liked the smell of the sea, said it reminded him of Sicily from his childhood. Vittorio received a call at 9:15 p.m. Carmen was cleaning the hallway outside his office, reorganizing cleaning supplies in a built-in cabinet, and he heard the tone of voice change dramatically. He couldn't hear the words, but that unmistakable tension of a predator sensing a threat was impossible to ignore. It was something in the timbre, the speed of the responses, the heavy silence between sentences. 15 minutes later, Vittorio called an emergency meeting via coded text messages that each lieutenant received on disposable cell phones exchanged weekly. His 5 main allies arrived one by one in the following 20 minutes. Marco Scar Ribeiro, the 43-year-old head of security with an ugly line cutting across his face from his left ear to his chin, a reminder of a 2015 ambush he survived by sheer luck and quick reflexes. Alessandro Conti, the 38-year-old Italian accountant with the appearance of a university professor, but the brain of a financial genius capable of transforming dirty money into immaculately clean investments through offshore companies in tax havens. Rodrigo Torres, the 51-year-old port manager who ensured through systematic bribery and occasional threats that specific containers were never inspected by curious authorities. Paulo Mudo Santos, no relation to Carmen, a silent 35-year-old executioner responsible for making human problems disappear without a trace. His nickname came from the legend that he never uttered a word during executions, only worked with surgical efficiency. And Isabella Marchetti, Vittorio's niece, 32 years old with dangerous beauty inherited from her Brazilian mother, and an even more dangerous ambition inherited from her Sicilian blood, always dressed like a business magazine executive, but with eyes that calculated power shifts like chess players calculate 20 moves ahead. Carmen was cleaning the adjacent meeting room when they settled around the oval table. It was a smaller room used for secondary meetings, separated from Vittorio's main office by a wall that seemed solid but had terribly faulty acoustics. a construction floor Carmen had discovered years ago, and Vittorio had never corrected because he rarely used that space for sensitive conversations. But that night, with palpable urgency, they settled there. Carmen heard everything with crystal clarity while pretending to scrub non-existent stains from the windows with slow, methodical circular motions. "We have a serious problem," Vittorio began without preamble, his deep voice carrying that Italian accent that became heavier under stress, the R's vibrating more, the vowels lengthening. "Esteban Reyes, from the Medellin cartel, will arrive in 4 days to finalize the agreement on distribution routes along the southern coast. $20 million, exclusive access to our ports and laundering infrastructure, a strategic partnership that would give us an estimated 40% control of cocaine trafficking on the entire South American coast. Agreements with Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay are already in place, depending only on this central partnership." "I thought it was completely closed," Alessandro said, consulting a tablet where he kept encrypted records. "The terms were agreed upon 2 months ago. Initial transfers have already taken place. 5 million in signals have already been distributed to accounts I prepared." "They were closed off," Vittorio said, and there was pure venom in his voice now, the kind of cold rage that was more frightening than temper tantrums. "Until someone poisoned Reyes's ear with calculated lies. I received information through my contact in Bogotá that he is hesitant, seriously questioning our operational reliability. Someone planted specific doubts about our ability to maintain discretion, about internal divisions, about whether we can truly deliver what we promised or if we will crumble into internal warfare at the critical moment." A heavy silence fell over the room like toxic fog. Isabella was the first to speak, her voice cold and controlled as ice. "Who would do this? What enemy would have direct access to Reyes and enough credibility to sow doubt?" "I don't know yet," Vittorio admitted, and admitting ignorance required visible effort. "But when I find out, and I will find out, that person will learn, in a very painful and permanent way, what happens when you meddle in the Marchetti family business. Examples need to be made." "And what about the deal itself?" Marco asked, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. "Reyes is known internationally for being extremely paranoid. If he already has doubts planted, convincing him to go through with it is going to be—" "Then we've eliminated those doubts completely," Vittorio cut in firmly. "When he arrives Saturday night, I want him to see an absolutely flawless operation. No visible flaws, no exploitable weaknesses, nothing, absolutely nothing, that justifies hesitation or second thought. Marco, thoroughly review all casino and port security. Replace any element that isn't 100% reliable. Alessandro, prepare forensic financial statements that prove our operational solidity over the last 5 years. Rodrigo, organize a port tour that demonstrates absolute control. I want every employee to be aligned, every process to be visible but impressive. Isabella, prepare the reception here at the casino. I want Reyes to feel treated like a king, visiting powerful allies, but a king who clearly understands that we have more power, more structure, more capacity to destroy those who betray us." The meeting continued for another 45 minutes, every detail obsessively fine-tuned, specific responsibilities distributed with military precision. Carmen absorbed it all, her interpreter brain automatically cataloguing information while her hand moved the cloth in mesmerizing mechanical circles against the glass. When they finally left, Isabella first with hurried steps, then the others at intervals of minutes so as not to seem obvious, Carmen waited a full 10 minutes, timing herself on her cheap wristwatch before entering the meeting room to officially clean. She moved between the chairs where dangerous men had sat, emptying crystal ashtrays where Vittorio smoked Cuban Cohiba cigars that cost 300 reais each, cleaning glasses of 25-year-old Macallan whiskey that left sticky rings on the varnished surfaces, collecting crumpled papers discarded in baskets. She never read them, a lesson learned early on that explicit curiosity was suicide, but she absorbed everything peripheral, constructing a mental map of the Marchetti Empire through fragments. Over the next 4 days, the casino visibly transformed. Security was doubled. Men in dark suits with headsets and suspicious bulges under their jackets appearing on every corner, every corridor, every entrance and exit. Cosmetic renovations happened in absurd record time. Teams working 24 hours a day without stopping. Fresh paint throughout the second floor. Carpets replaced with even more expensive versions. Even the decorative plants were swapped for rare orchids, imported especially for thousands of reais each pot. The air vibrated with a tension that made even the regular players, businessmen addicted to poker, heirs squandering fortunes on roulette, realize that something monumentally important was happening. Carmen observed everything from her privileged position of invisibility. She noticed when Marco violently argued with 2 security guards who arrived 15 minutes late for their shift, firing them on the spot with verbal violence that visibly made other armed men tremble. She noticed when Alessandro spent 3 consecutive nights in the office without sleep, deep, dark circles digging into his face. Growing piles of documents being incinerated in a temporarily installed industrial shredder. She noticed when Isabella personally oversaw every detail of the VIP lounge's decoration, rejecting 3 different floral arrangements until she found the right one, yelling at the terrified decorator that right wasn't acceptable, it had to be perfect. But Carmen also noticed other, more subtle and disturbing things. Whispered conversations between Isabella and Alessandro that stopped abruptly whenever anyone approached. Exchanged glances laden with meanings she couldn't fully decipher, but recognized as conspiratorial. And one Thursday night, while cleaning the luxurious second-floor women's restroom, all white marble and giant mirrors, she heard Isabella talking on the phone in English inside one of the stalls, the door barely closed, letting her voice leak out. "I know it's risky," Isabella was saying in perfect American English, probably acquired during a university exchange program. "But if this works exactly as planned, I won't answer to my uncle or any man in this archaic organization anymore. The deal is mine to control, the roots are mine to manage, the empire finally evolves into the 21st century. Yes, I fully understand the consequences if it fails. Just make sure Reyes receives exactly the right information at the right time. It all depends on the timing." Carmen froze completely, her heart racing until it pounded painfully against her ribs. This wasn't just corporate ambition or a common family power struggle. This was deliberate and calculated betrayal. Isabella was actively sabotaging her own uncle, plotting some kind of elaborate scheme to seize control. The discovery was like swallowing ice on a hot day, initially relieving, but quickly turning into a dangerous discomfort that chilled from the inside out. Carmen finished cleaning in absolute silence, forcing her trembling hands to follow a mechanical routine, and left the bathroom without making a sound. But her mind was working furiously, processing the implications. Revealing what she had heard would mean breaking her golden rule that had kept her alive for a decade, to say nothing, ever, under any circumstances. But remaining silent meant complicity in a betrayal that would inevitably explode into a bloody internal war between factions, leaving bodies in its wake. And her long experience with the mafia had taught her that cleaning ladies, drivers, invisible employees were always the first to be eliminated when witnesses needed to disappear. The night before Reyes arrived, the casino seemed like a living organism, pulsating with nervous anxiety. Vittorio was even more serious than usual, smoking cigar after cigar in his office until the air was thick with bluish smoke. Marco roamed the corridors, obsessively checking every security guard, every camera, every possible entry point. Alessandro reviewed numbers for the 100th time, muttering to himself in Italian when he found the slightest discrepancies. And Isabella was too calm, that artificial serenity of someone who has already rolled the dice and is just waiting for the result, knowing there's no turning back. Carmen was cleaning the hallway near Vittorio's office. He kept the door slightly ajar because of the heat, the fan spinning lazily, when she heard loud voices. The door was open about 15 centimeters, a rare mistake for someone normally so careful about privacy. "Are you absolutely sure that everything is under control?" Vittorio was asking Marco, and there was an urgency in his voice that Carmen had rarely heard. "Absolutely," Marco replied with a confidence that sounded forced. "Reyes is going to see an operation that even the federal police would envy in terms of efficiency and discretion." "He needs to see more than efficiency," Vittorio said, tapping cigar ash into a crystal ashtray. "He needs to see unwavering loyalty, a real family. That's what differentiates organizations that last for centuries from gangs that implode in 5 years. Our code, our values, our code," a female voice interrupted, Isabella entering the office with confident steps, her high heels echoing on the marble, "is exactly what has kept us stuck in methods from the last century. Perhaps it's time to evolve, Zio. The world has changed. The modern mafia doesn't survive on Sicilian romanticism and codes of honor that no one respects anymore." "Be careful, Isabella," Vittorio said, and there was dangerous warning in his voice. "Tradition is not sentimental weakness. It is a foundation that has survived wars, betrayals, imprisonments. It is what separates us from animals, or a prison that prevents us from growing," she retorted, with a boldness that made Carmen's eyes widen. "But don't worry. Tomorrow, when Reyes confirms the agreement, you'll see that your old ways still work, for now." She left, passing by Carmen as if she were invisible furniture, her expensive perfume leaving a trail in the air. Vittorio remained silent for a long moment, and Carmen, risking a quick glance through the opening, saw something in his face she had never seen before. Genuine doubt, not about business or strategy, but about family, about blood, about whether Isabella was an ally or a threat. The expression lasted only 3 seconds before the mask returned, but Carmen saw it, and she recognized something painfully familiar, the expression of someone realizing too late that they had been betrayed by the very person they should have protected. Carmen finished her shift at 6 a.m., but she didn't go straight home as she usually did. She sat on a bench by the shore, watching the sun rise over the choppy ocean, waging a brutal internal war. The rational version of her, the one that had survived a decade of being invisible, screamed, "It's not your problem. Let the wolves kill each other. Survivors aren't heroes, they're clever." But another voice, perhaps that of the woman she had been before Daniel died, before losing everything, before learning that the world was cruel and justice was an illusion, whispered persistently, "You know exactly what it's like to be betrayed by those who should protect you. You know how it ends, in blood, in chaos, in innocence being destroyed as collateral damage. You can stop it." Liti. When the sun was high above the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink, Carmen made a decision that would change everything. She got up from the bench, threw down the cold coffee she had bought from a street vendor, and went back to the casino. It was 8:30 a.m., the casino already closed after a night of gambling, daytime security taking over. She went up to the second floor, territory that cleaning ladies rarely visited during the day, and knocked on Vittorio's office door. Silence for 5 seconds that seemed like an eternity. Then, "Come in." She opened the door. Vittorio was behind the massive desk, a half-empty glass of grappa, looking at documents with the tired expression of someone who hadn't slept. He looked up, surprise evident on his face. "You're Carmen, right? The cleaning lady?" Her voice was thick with confusion. Unseen employees didn't knock on her door during the day. "Yes, sir," Carmen said, her voice trembling slightly but forcing firmness. "I need to speak with you. It's about Mr. Reyes and the worrying information he received." Vittorio straightened up instantly, his full attention now focused on her with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. "You have exactly 30 seconds before I decide whether you're wasting my time or if you're some kind of threat that needs to be eliminated." Carmen took a deep breath, crossing a point of no return. Isabella is betraying you, Don Vittorio. I overheard her on the phone 3 days ago, speaking in English. She's passing information to Reyes, deliberately planting doubts about his leadership. Her plan is to make the deal fall apart, then she offers to save it, taking control as the new generation of the family that can actually deliver results. She wants your empire, and she's willing to destroy it first and then rebuild it under her command. The silence that followed was absolute and terrifying. Vittorio studied her with an intensity that made Carmen want to recoil, but she stood firm, her hands crossed in front of her body to hide her trembling. "Why should I believe you?" he asked, eventually, his voice dangerously low. "You're a cleaning lady who comes up with an absurd accusation against my own niece. You might be working for rivals, trying to create internal discord that weakens us. It could be a trap set by the Azevedos or some other enemy. Because in 10 years of cleaning this place, I never said a word about anything I saw or heard," Carmen replied, maintaining eye contact despite her fear. "I learned to be invisible, Don Vittorio. I saw executions, money laundering, deals that would end lives. And I never spoke, never commented, not even to myself. But I was married to a man who testified against criminals and died because the system failed to protect him. Daniel was killed by the Azevedo brothers in 2012. Perhaps you even know the story. It's the kind that circulates in the underworld as a warning. I understand betrayal better than anyone, and I know how to recognize it when I see it." Something changed in Vittorio's expression, not exactly confidence, but recognition. "Daniel Santos, the mechanic who testified about the execution in the parking lot. I remember. The Azevedos were too reckless. They left a living witness. He believed in justice," Carmen said bitterly, "and he died for it. I learned that official justice is slow and flawed, but I also learned that betrayal is a cancer. If it's not stopped quickly, it consumes everything around it." Vittorio leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced, studying her. "You said you heard Isabella on the phone. What language was she speaking?" "English. American, perfect accent of someone who studied abroad." "And you understand English perfectly?" "Fluently. And Italian, Spanish, French, basic Mandarin, and Portuguese. I was a court interpreter for 12 years before being forced to change careers." Vittorio processed this, a new understanding emerging. "An interpreter who speaks 6 languages working as a cleaner. You listen to everything we say, thinking it's safe." "Yes," Carmen admitted, "but I never used it against you. I just survived. Until now." "Until now," she agreed, "because Isabella won't stop at you. That kind of boundless ambition always needs more blood, more power. And when the internal war comes, because it will if she gets what she wants, people like me will be the first casualties. Invisible people are eliminated first as inconvenient witnesses. I'd rather take a stand now than be killed later as inevitable collateral damage." Vittorio remained silent for a long moment, his eyes studying every detail of her face, searching for lies, fear, a hidden agenda. Finally, "Even if it's true, and it's a big if, why would you risk telling me? You could simply disappear, look for another job in another city." "Because I already tried to disappear once," Carmen said wearily. "After Daniel died, I changed my name, my city, my whole life. And yet, I ended up here, cleaning blood off marble in another criminal empire. You can't run from this world, it finds you. So maybe it's time to finally stay and fight, even if it's just warning someone that the knife is coming." Vittorio picked up the internal phone. "Marco, come to my office, immediately, and bring discreet audio equipment." Marco arrived in 5 minutes, entering with the urgency of someone expecting an emergency. He froze when he saw Carmen, clearly confused. "Sit down," Vittorio ordered. "Our invisible cleaning lady has an extraordinary story about my niece." Carmen repeated everything, the conversation she had overheard, the specific details, the exact dates, even the intonation of Isabella's voice. Marco listened with an increasingly somber expression, the scar on his face seeming more pronounced as his muscles tensed. "It's possible," he said eventually, choosing his words carefully. Isabella has always been too ambitious for her own good. And she has contacts we don't even know fully about. She travels constantly to São Paulo and Rio. Her social networks are full of businessmen and consultants who are probably competitors or intermediaries. But it's also exactly the kind of accusation a clever enemy would plant, Vittorio countered. A suspicion impossible to definitively prove that creates destructive paranoia within the family. I can prove it, Carmen said quietly. Both men looked at her with renewed attention. Isabella is going to make a move tomorrow during Reyes' visit, something to subtly sabotage or create controlled chaos that would justify Reyes giving up or demanding new terms. If you let me get close to her, using audio equipment, I can capture concrete evidence. I'm invisible, remember. Nobody monitors your words around a cleaning lady. She'll expose herself if pressure is applied at the right moment. Vittorio studied her with renewed intensity. If you're lying, if this is some kind of elaborate trick, you're not simply going to die. You're going to disappear in a way that will make your family, if you have one, beg for the mercy of a quick death. I have no family left, Carmen said simply. Daniel was everything. After him, I only have my own skin to protect, and a survival instinct strong enough to know that lying to you would be stupid and unnecessary suicide. Vittorio exchanged a glance with Marco, a silent communication taking place. Finally, he nodded. All right, tomorrow you come to the port, disguised as part of the cleaning crew that will be preparing the administrative office for the meeting. Marco, put the most discreet microphone we have on her. I'll use the button model, Marco said. It looks exactly like a normal part of the uniform. 10-meter pickup range, encrypted transmission. And Carmen, Vittorio leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. If you're right and Isabella really is a traitor, you'll have my gratitude, which in our world is worth infinitely more than any amount of money. But if you're wrong or lying, he left the threat hanging in the heavy air. I understand perfectly, Carmen said, and left the office with trembling legs, but her head held high with newfound dignity. The port of Santos, in the grey light of Saturday morning, looked like an industrial kingdom straight out of a dystopian film. Giant cranes like mechanical dinosaurs dominating the horizon, containers stacked in towers forming colourful labyrinths of steel, the omnipresent smell of ocean salt mixed with diesel oil and rust. Vittorio brought Reyes at 10 sharp, accompanied by Alessandro, Isabella, Rodrigo, and a small security detail, 10 armed men trying to look like normal corporate security guards, but failing completely. Carmen was in the administrative office of Warehouse 7, a 3-story grey building that looked abandoned from the outside, but was meticulously maintained inside. She was supposedly cleaning windows that were already perfectly clean, but in reality, she was using the microphone button that Marco had installed in her uniform 3 hours earlier. Isabella was 1 floor below in the operational area, walking alongside Reyes, pointing out aspects of the port operation with a professional smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Impressive, Reyes was saying in Spanish with a heavy Colombian accent. You really control everything here. Every move, every container. Absolute control, Isabella confirmed in fluent Spanish. My uncle built this operation over 30 years with a long-term vision, but she hesitated artistically, creating suspense. There are inevitable challenges with aging leadership, slower reflexes, diminishing adaptability, resistance to necessary changes. In the office above, Carmen listened to everything through a headset connected to the surveillance system that Marco had hastily installed during the night. Vittorio stood beside her, his face completely expressionless, but his eyes burning with a cold rage that made the air seem heavier. Keep going, dear niece, he murmured to himself. Keep digging your own grave. Below, Isabella deliberately led Reyes away from the others. Alessandro was showing documents to one of Reyes's aides. Rodrigo was explaining tracking systems. Marco was overseeing security. Isabella isolated Reyes near a red container, pretending to point out identification codes. Can I be completely frank, Don Reyes? She asked, her voice lowering conspiratorially. Please, I appreciate honesty, Reyes replied, interested. My uncle is brilliant. He built an admirable empire. But he's stuck in methodologies from the last century. This agreement he proposes, it's good, functional, but not extraordinary. If you work directly with me, cutting out unnecessary intermediaries, I could offer significantly better terms. Full access not only to Santos, but also to Paranagua and Rio Grande, 3 main ports on the entire coast. And the price would be substantially more competitive. Let's say 15 million instead of 20, but with 50% more capacity. Are you proposing a partnership that completely excludes your uncle? Reyes sounded simultaneously skeptical and intrigued. That would be an inevitable evolution, Isabella concluded. Vittorio will retire soon, whether he wants to or not. Age, federal pressure, fatigue. The question isn't if, but when. And the question for you is whether you want to be on the winning side of this transition or the losing side. Work with me now, facilitate the change, and we'll avoid unnecessary bloodshed and operational disruption. Vittorio abruptly turned off the audio, his jaw so clenched that muscles visibly bulged beneath his skin. Enough, Marco! Marco appeared instantly, as always, a loyal shadow. Sir, bring Isabella in, immediately. Use the back service stairs. I want Reyes to see absolutely nothing yet, and be discreet but firm. If she resists, you have permission to use necessary force. Marco went downstairs. Carmen watched through the dusty window as he casually approached Isabella, drawing near as if to report something about security, whispering something urgent in her ear. Isabella's expression changed dramatically, confidence turning to confusion and then to fear when she saw something in Marco's face that made her understand she was exposed. She followed Marco, trying to maintain her composure in front of Reyes, but failing. 3 minutes later, Isabella entered the administrative office. She froze when she saw Vittorio waiting, and then her gaze fell on Carmen standing there with the audio equipment, and complete understanding lit up her face. "Zio," she began, her voice trying to sound innocent but coming out strangled. "No," Vittorio said, his voice utterly devoid of emotion, which was infinitely more terrifying than explosive rage. "Say absolutely nothing. Don't insult my intelligence with weak lies after I've heard every treacherous word that came out of your mouth. I can explain it perfectly. You betrayed the family," Vittorio cut in, each word falling like a death sentence. "You tried to steal my business, undermine my authority, destroy an agreement I spent months building. And for what? Blind ambition, youthful impatience, arrogant belief that you're smarter than everyone around you." Isabella partially recovered, and something cold and hard emerged in her expression, a mask slipping, revealing naked ambition. For survival and evolution, their archaic traditions are slowly killing this organization. I was trying to save it, modernize it, bring it into the present reality. Lying, conspiring with strangers, betraying blood. "Adapting," she spat. "Something you stubbornly refuse to do. You're so attached to the sacred code, to the old Sicilian ways, that you don't see that the world has completely changed. We no longer need to govern exclusively with fear and violence. We can build true partnerships, strategic alliances, built on the betrayal of their own family." Vittorio laughed bitterly. "That's so much more civilized and modern." "It was necessary," Isabella said coldly, abandoning any pretense. "You would never let me lead. You would never give me a real chance just because I'm a woman, because I'm too young, because I didn't bleed in your pathetic wars. So I created my own opportunity." Vittorio turned to Marco. "Take her to the secure containment warehouse. I'll decide what to do after I've finished with Reyes and salvage the deal she nearly destroyed." "Are you going to kill me?" Isabella asked, and there was real fear piercing the bravado now. "Your own niece, your brother's daughter." "I don't know yet," Vittorio admitted with brutal honesty. "Part of me wants to, the part that remembers that betrayal is punished with absolute death. But another part remembers that you are the daughter of Giuseppe, my younger brother, and he made me promise to protect you when he died of an overdose when you were 9 years old. So, I'll let you live, but in permanent exile. Disappear completely. Change your name, your country, your entire life. If I see you again, if I hear that you're trying to return to this world, if I find out that you're talking about family or business, there will be no second chance or mercy." Marco led her away, and Isabella left the office in silence, all her fire and ambition extinguished by the brutal reality of the consequences that had finally come to pass. The door closed behind them with a final echo. Vittorio stood still for a long moment, looking out the window at the harbour below, where Reyes waited, probably confused by Isabella's sudden absence. Finally, he turned to Carmen. "You saved my life today, literally, and definitely my business." "I saved my own life too," Carmen corrected honestly, "but if it helped you in the process, all the better for everyone." Vittorio smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his intimidating mask into something almost human, almost approachable. Brutal honesty. What an utterly refreshing rarity in this world of polished lies. "What do you want, Carmen? Money? Permanent protection? A royal position with power?" Carmen considered it carefully. "I want to stop being invisible out of necessity. I don't want the spotlight or public attention. That would be dangerous. But I want recognition that I exist as a person, that I have real value beyond scrubbing marble floors." "You will be my interpreter and personal consultant," Vittorio decided immediately. 10 times your current salary, 15,000 a month to start. You come to important meetings, translate with that precision you've developed, and continue using that dangerous superpower of being underestimated. People will assume you're just decorative administrative staff and will speak freely around you. And you report everything you hear to me. Do you want me to be your permanent spy? "I want you to be my real-time radar," Vittorio corrected. "I trust Marco, Alessandro, Rodrigo. They're loyal, tested. But Isabella taught me a brutal lesson. Even blood family can stab you in the back if ambition is strong enough. I need someone who has no political agenda beyond basic survival. Someone invisible until absolutely essential." Carmen extended her hand. "Deal accepted." Vittorio squeezed her tight, a firm grip, like someone sealing pacts with blood, honor, and permanent consequences. They descended together to the operational level. Reyes awaited them with evident impatience, repeatedly glancing at his expensive watch. "Don Vittorio, where is your niece?" She disappeared in the middle of the conversation. "Isabella had an urgent and unexpected family emergency," Vittorio said softly, the lie flowing naturally. "She needed to return to São Paulo immediately. But I can introduce you to someone far more useful for our purposes, Carmen Santos, my new consultant, specializing in international relations and multilingual communication." Reyes looked at Carmen with barely disguised skepticism, assessing her simple clothes and ordinary appearance. "Consultant? I speak 6 languages fluently," Carmen said in perfect Spanish with a neutral accent, "and I have 12 years of professional experience interpreting extremely complex legal negotiations in federal court. Don Vittorio recently hired me to ensure that our international partnerships are perfectly understood on both sides, without cultural or linguistic misunderstandings." Something changed in Reyes's gaze, a gruff respect replacing initial disdain. Impressive and unexpected. It's genuinely rare to find real professionalism in this dirty business. The rest of the visit went smoothly, like a well-oiled operation, with Carmen translating subtle nuances between Spanish and Portuguese, answering technical questions about port logistics with a competence that surprised even Vittorio. Reyes visibly relaxed. At the end of the afternoon, they sat down in the administrative office, hastily renovated that morning, and signed the agreement on an improvised table. $20 million, Reyes said, raising a glass of imported red wine. "To the lucrative and lasting partnership." "To partnership," Vittorio echoed, "and to genuine loyalty. the only currency that truly matters in our corrupt world. When Reyes finally left 3 hours later, satisfied and bound by his contract, Vittorio turned to Carmen with an expression that mixed respect and curiosity. "You have an absolutely natural talent for this. Most people would get nervous under pressure and make fatal mistakes. You were flawless from start to finish. I spent 12 years translating testimonies in homicide and trafficking cases," Carmen explained. "I quickly learned to maintain perfect composure when lives literally depend on every word chosen. And your husband Daniel, who died, was he ever properly avenged?" Carmen hesitated, then decided on brutal honesty. "Never completely. The hired assassins probably disappeared to Paraguay. The case went cold in 6 months. Official justice is pathetic and inefficient for ordinary people without power or money." "Give me names and details," Vittorio said firmly. "If they are still alive and traceable, they will answer appropriately. I'm not doing this for your husband, I never met him, but for you, because now you are officially under my protection, and whoever touches mine answers for it." Carmen felt a painful warmth in her chest, not simple gratitude, but recognition of worth. "Thank you." The following months were a complete transformation of identity and purpose. Carmen became a constant presence by Vittorio's side, always with a discreet tablet in hand, wearing more professional but still deliberately ordinary clothes, reflecting tense negotiations with paranoid Russians, calculating Chinese, volatile Colombians, and traditionalist Italians. Her ordinary appearance and discreet manner caused others to constantly underestimate her, a strategic advantage that Vittorio exploited without remorse or hesitation. "They automatically assume you're a glorified secretary or a discreet mistress," he commented after a particularly tense meeting with Russian arms dealers. "They speak openly around you, reveal strategic weaknesses, admit fears. It's extraordinarily useful. It's the permanent superpower of being a middle-aged woman without striking beauty," Carmen replied curtly. "Guaranteed social invisibility until you need to be useful." Vittorio also strictly kept his word about Daniel. 3 months after the meeting with Reyes, he handed Carmen a thin black folder, the 3 men who killed her husband 13 years ago. "One is serving a 15-year sentence for another unrelated crime. I arranged through contacts within the prison system to make his remaining life extremely uncomfortable and short. The second had a fatal accident last week in Foz do Iguaçu. The car's brakes failed catastrophically on a mountain road. Sadly tragic. The third tried to resist when my men located him in Paraguay, but he didn't resist successfully." Carmen opened the folder, read the meticulous details, saw the photos that confirmed it, and closed her eyes for a long moment. It wasn't exactly satisfaction, it wasn't joy, but it was definitive closure. "Thank you sincerely." "It's the code my father taught me," Vittorio said simply. "You are family now in a real way, and family protects family, avenges family, honors family." But the story didn't end comfortably there. Because Carmen, despite being completely integrated into the dangerous world of organized crime, still carried the moral compass that had made her choose the profession of justice. And when she discovered, 6 months after the deal with Reyes, that Vittorio was coldly planning to eliminate a completely innocent witness who had accidentally seen too much during a night shipment, she made another impossible decision. She went to his office on a quiet Friday night, when the casino buzzed with compulsive gamblers downstairs, but the executive floor was empty and quiet. "Vittorio," she said, using his first name for the first time in 6 months, "we need to have a serious talk." He looked up from the financial documents, surprised by the direct tone. "About what specifically?" "The witness from Pier 12, the truck driver's wife who saw the illegal shipment. What's wrong with her?" "She knows absolutely nothing relevant or dangerous. She saw a container being moved irregularly at night, but she has no idea of its actual contents or strategic implications. She is completely innocent." "She is a potential risk," Vittorio corrected coldly. Risks are eliminated preventively before they become real problems. It doesn't have to be like this time, Carmen insisted firmly. You could scare her properly, make her move to another state with financial incentives. You absolutely don't need to kill her. Vittorio leaned back, his expression hardening. Are you seriously questioning my operational decision? I'm reminding you of the code you value so much and constantly quote, Carmen said without flinching. Family protects family. Loyalty is sacred, but family also doesn't shed innocent blood without absolute necessity. Your father Giuseppe was known for being brutal when necessary, but fundamentally just. He didn't kill indiscriminately without solid reason. Are you honoring him or systematically betraying what he stood for? The silence was tense and dangerous. Then Vittorio sighed heavily. You have an irritatingly suicidal audacity to confront me like this. Because I'm literally the only person in this entire world who can do this, Carmen said calmly. Everyone else has paralyzing fear or a hidden political agenda. I just have a stubborn and stupid conscience. Vittorio studied her for a long moment. Fine, against my better judgment. She gets a suitably terrifying scare and a generous sum to start a new life in Mato Grosso or Amazonas, but if she speaks publicly to anyone, she won't go, Carmen assured him. Genuine fear and enough money buy silence that's far more reliable than bullets buy ghosts that eventually haunt you. That conversation established a new, permanent pattern in their relationship. Carmen became not only an interpreter and a spy, but a living conscience. The persistent voice that reminded Vittorio of basic humanity when he sank dangerously too deep into the necessary brutality of the underworld. She couldn't completely save him from himself. She couldn't transform him into a saint, but she could anchor some minimal decency in the empire of calculated violence he ruled. 2 years after the dramatic incident with Isabella, the FBI, in cooperation with the Brazilian Federal Police, began a massive investigation into systematic money laundering at the port of Santos. Vittorio knew through paid contacts that he was definitely on their radar, that they would eventually have enough evidence to indict him. On a melancholy autumn night, he called Carmen to the office. I'm going to retire permanently from the business, he announced without preamble. I'll gradually transfer operations to Alessandro and Rodrigo, step completely out of the spotlight while I can still do so with dignity. Perhaps I'll find unlikely peace in a remote Italian village, growing vineyards as my father Giuseppe dreamed of doing, but never managed to. It's a wise and mature choice, Carmen said honestly. And me? You're coming with me to Italy, Vittorio said as if it were obvious. As a permanent consultant, interpreter when needed, and a true friend. Because you are genuinely the only person in 40 whole years of organized crime who told me the brutal truth, even when it hurt intensely. That's worth infinitely more than gold or bought loyalty. Carmen smiled genuinely. I accept, on one final condition. Always with conditions. Which ones? You fund a private foundation that specifically helps families of witnesses in flawed protection programs. Anonymous, with no traceable links, obviously, but real and functional, making a measurable difference. Vittorio laughed, a genuine and surprisingly youthful sound, always with that nagging conscience. Fine, it will be done as specified. 6 months later, Vittorio Marchetti officially disappeared from the records, listed as wanted but never located. Rumors constantly circulated in the Brazilian underworld. Some said he had died in an ambush, others that he was living in hiding in Sicily, still others that he had made a secret deal with the FBI. The real truth was that he was in an isolated villa in Tuscany, producing surprisingly good wines under an elaborately constructed false name, with Carmen managing discreet international sales and ensuring that no one asked overly curious questions. On a perfect sunny afternoon, 3 years after finally leaving Brazil, they sat on the stone terrace of the village, glasses of excellent red wine in hand, gazing at rolling vineyards that stretched to the distant horizon like a green sea. Do you truly regret leaving the entire empire? Carmen asked thoughtfully. Vittorio pondered for a long time. Sometimes nostalgically, Power is genuinely addictive like a drug. But then I clearly remember living with constant paralyzing fear of betrayal, always sleeping with a loaded gun under my pillow, knowing that every dinner could be poisoned, every handshake could be preceded by a bullet. This here, real peace, protective anonymity, simple and honest purpose, is a luxury immeasurably greater than any empire. And Isabella? Carmen asked curiously. Do you know where she is now? In Los Angeles, working as a luxury real estate agent under a completely different name and fabricated past. Marco discreetly watches her through contacts, but she seems genuinely reformed. She's married, has a young daughter, and has apparently found peace. Sometimes a real near-death experience truly fundamentally transforms people. They remained in comfortable silence for a moment, enjoying the warm Italian sun. You saved me, you know that? Vittorio finally said. That impossible night when you knocked on my door, risking everything. If Isabella had succeeded completely, I would be dead or imprisoned for life. You literally risked everything to warn me. I took the risk mainly to save myself, Carmen recalled honestly. You were just a fortunate and useful consequence. Always with brutal and refreshing honesty, Vittorio smiled affectionately. That's exactly why I trust you absolutely. In 40 years of constant professional lies, you are the only consistent truth. Carmen raised her glass in a toast. To the truth, then. And to those stubborn cleaning ladies who refuse to remain invisible when it matters. To the most dangerous cleaning lady in all of Santos, Vittorio toasted, who saved an empire by completely destroying the illusion of invulnerability. The glasses clinked melodiously, wine shimmering deep red like blood in the golden setting sun. And somewhere between pastoral Italy and violent Brazil, between organized crime and imperfect redemption, two extremely unlikely people found something genuinely rare. Peace not through impossible innocence, but through conscious and difficult choices to be incrementally better than the cruel world expected of them. Because in the end, the story was never really about million-dollar deals or dramatic family betrayals. It was about a deliberately invisible woman who finally decided to be seen when it mattered, and about a dangerously powerful man who finally learned to listen to voices that others silenced. And sometimes, in those impossible moments of genuine connection, even the darkest underworld can know something that strangely resembles grace.